If you've ever faced a necessary but hard ending in your life, whether it's a job, a relationship, a role, or a way of living, and wondered who you'll be on the other side, this episode is for you. Today I'm joined by Susan Metcalf. After a successful commercial and not-for-profit career, in the aftermath of COVID, her CEO role came to an end. For Susan, it was both necessary and a life quake. It was the end of a role that she'd poured herself into, a dream job, but one she knew she couldn't stay in. In this conversation, we talk about what happens after that kind of full stop, when there's no tidy next job lined up, and you have to decide what a life looks like without the position, the inbox, and the calendar. Susan shares the messy middle of that season and the slow, sometimes surprising ways she began to craft a different life for herself. 3 years on, today, her world looks and feels very different, and she reflects on what she's learned along the way. Susan, welcome.
Thank you, Sue. It's a pleasure to be with you.
For listeners who don't know you, how would you introduce yourself at this life stage?
So when I get asked the question, what do you do? I come back with, I now have a portfolio filled with purpose. Some of that purpose is personally fulfilling, and some of it is about causes I deeply believe in. So having escaped the constraints of corporate life, I've made some very deliberate choices about where I invest my time and where those choices lead.
Well, I look forward to getting into that. But to ease us into your story, could you take us back and paint a picture of what your life looked like in that dream job and back to where everything started to change?
Yeah, certainly. I had a great job, a job I loved, a job I felt very strongly aligned with. It was all about promoting women leaders and having more women leaders at decision-making tables so that we as a community make better decisions for everyone, not just some small vested interest groups. I'd been fortunate to grow up surrounded by some really strong female role models. And so this was a great space for me. Women that had been trailblazers, women that had had a positive impact in their communities. And so those pieces of purpose aligned very strongly for me. It was a role that meant I could bring both my commercial and not-for-profit experience to bear. And it meant that on a personal level, I felt very strongly aligned with the role. I had good capabilities to do the role, and we were doing some great work. And then along came COVID.
So tell us about that.
Well, many of your listeners will remember that COVID was just a dreadful time for us as a community. It was relentless. It was so uncertain. And many women bore the brunt of it. They were already parents, carers, employees, partners, and now they were doing all of that in the context of all this ambiguity and great fear in the community about what this deathly, highly contagious disease was. Those things meant that I was in a position where my largely female team needed a lot of support, my family needed support, the members of my organisation needed support. But at the same time, it was an incredible moment of opportunity for us as an organisation to really advocate and lobby hard for the changes that women needed to protect them and to grow their place in society. So I had very strong demands on every part of my life.
Yes, gosh, I remember it well. I felt quite the same, Susan, in terms of the pressures and kind of the level of change that was just in every aspect of life. And coming out of that for you, Susan, you felt like it was essential for you to leave. Can you remember what that was like at that time?
Yeah, I'm pretty resilient by nature, and I've got a high capacity for work. I like work. I liked the work that I was doing. But COVID was like nothing else. And ultimately, I was well beyond burnout. I was well beyond spent. I was well beyond the point where I had nothing left to give. It was not good for me, and it certainly was not good for the people around me. I'd gone from leading a thriving, successful organisation pre-COVID to completely and utterly spent, and I had to
Yeah.
step away.
What do you remember most about the first few months after you decided to step back from that role?
The most immediate thing was turning off the alarm clock. Fantastic. No longer having to be up at 6:15 every day, up and out of the house, off to work. But learning to sleep deeply again, to not wake up with that head full of to-dos and wondering how on earth I was going to get to the first of them, let alone everything else that was on the list. But beyond that, caring for my immediate mental, physical, emotional health, the next few months for me were just about taking time out to just sit with where I was, to enjoy some sunlight and exercise, to chat with friends, and to spend time with my family.
Yeah, so it sounds like you were really deeply present in the moment and not thinking about the future. Was your intention to return to work at some point?
Initially, in that period, I put no demands on myself, and I just needed this time and space to let whatever was next find me rather than push myself into something that may or may not have been right. I did think about continuing to work, and I explored some flexible options. I was approached about a very senior role and really well aligned with my skills and experience, but I just couldn't summon up the excitement and the energy needed for that sort of role. And I saw somebody also pointed to a role that in my previous life I would have died for. It was a fantastic role. And I thought, I just don't want that. I just don't want it. So as time went by, I started to reframe where I was and think about what I really wanted to do. All the things that those demands on a senior corporate job just give you no time and space to think about.
I'm really curious about when you saw people applying for those other big jobs, or someone approached you about a big job. What was it about it that was so unappealing to you?
Yeah, probably unappealing is right. That question of really having to commit deeply to it and to be once again consumed by my working life, I think
Mm.
was a moment of I'm ready to do something else. I need to do something else. And, I've worked really hard over my working life to get to this point, and now maybe it's a bit of me time.
So, what did you notice was really changing in you at that time?
I have become so much better at making deliberate and considered decisions about what I need to do. And that's a product of having time and space to think about those and to be able to prioritize what I needed. I think during my working life, I've given a lot to others, and probably I would have been better if I'd prioritized myself a bit more. And I'd probably be a better CEO today because of that piece of understanding and knowledge.
Yeah. And so, what helped you in that process of shifting out of that kind of really significant career into what was to come next for you?
One of the things I did was after about a year or so of referring to myself as on sabbatical, and uh, I consciously reframed that to start using language to say I'd escaped the constraints of corporate life.
Hmm.
So, escape comes with lovely connotations of freedom and adventure and opportunity. And that's how I started to think about it. What was I going to do next that I wanted to do, not what others needed me to do?
Oh, it's such a beautiful reframe. Really lovely, really kind of fresh start, all about me, next adventure. What sort of stumbling blocks did you face as you started to kind of reorient your narrative and your life more towards the things that you most wanted to do?
Well, some of those themes that have shown up in your previous podcast also showed up for me.
Hmm.
Thinking about courage, courage to take decisions and to take that first step, starting where you're at.
Mm.
Thinking about friends, what you want out of your friendships and relationships, how do you want to go about those, where are you going to find those that'll take you forward to where you want to go. And I will say it helped enormously that although I hadn't planned to stop working at the moment, I did. I had got myself into a financial position where I could, and I knew that I didn't have to just jump into the next job. I had the time and space and the financial backing to be able to make decisions that were in my interests. So those themes that some of your previous guests have talked about are certainly very true and held true for me. And thinking about them, as I've said, consciously and deliberately, gave me the opportunity to, perhaps in your words, Sue, to think about who I could just be, who I wanted to become, where I wanted to belong.
Yeah. And since that big turning point for you, what new experiences, you talked about becoming, what new experiences or roles have you stepped into that you might not have imagined for yourself before?
So I don't think I'm a fundamentally different person, but some of the things that were always there have come to the fore, and other
Hmm.
things I've allowed to recede. They're still there, and I occasionally call on them, but I'm now in a position where I can explore some of those things that I couldn't in the past. So, one of the things that I'd always promised myself on that mythical day when I had more time was that I would go to art school, and I've done that. And I'll just wrap up.
Wow.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Um, it's stretched me in new ways. It's meant I've crossed paths with people I would never have met otherwise. Um, and most of all, I've scratched quite a deep itch, and it's resulting in creative output that continues to develop and, as again in your words, Sue, flourish. Um, Another thing that I've done is built on my experience with sailing. I've been a sailor for a long time, fairly informal, relaxed, fairly, although casual racing and so on. But I've recently returned from sailing across the Indian Ocean from Phuket in Thailand to the Maldives. And that
Again, wow.
fabulous experience. You know, you're out there thousands of kilometres from land, and the ocean below you is 4,000 metres deep. And it's blue and it's restless and it's continuous. And or you might be out there at night and standing watch at 3 a.m. and the sky is full of stars and it's fabulous.
Oh, I'm getting goosebumps listening to you, Susan. And that sense of awe that comes with natural beauty is just so, it's such a rejuvenating experience to have over and over. And that sounds incredible. It sounds like physically hard work, was it?
It can be, and particularly if the weather and the elements are not with you, it can be very physically hard work. It's physically quite demanding because you're on a watch system and you've got lots of broken sleep, and you might be awake for 3 hours and up on watch and in command of the boat and responsible for everything that's going on, and then expected to be back in bed and asleep because you've got to get up again and do it all over again. So
Wow.
that's quite
Yeah.
demanding on you. But it's also, you're in a little capsule of the world, and there's you and your shipmates, and you fall into a rhythm of how the day passes. And I think your excuse me, I think your word, Sue, is a great one. Awe. My kids went to a school that talked about responding with awe and wonder, and that's how you feel, awe and wonder about isn't about all of this that's out here.
And has that exposure to awe and um, that experience in the capsule out in the big wide world changed how you feel about things when you come home?
Um, I think it probably has. The word that comes to mind when you say that is steadied me. Perhaps brought stillness and that consideration of, really our first world problems are very compared to what's out there and our responsibility to the world and the people around us.
So you've talked about art school, you've talked about travels at sea. What else is going on in life for you now?
So I've chosen a couple of community causes that I'm well aligned with. One of those is related to women's sailing, and later in the year I'll have the opportunity to go travel with a team to the New York Yacht Club in Newport, Rhode Island, and contest the International Women's Championship there. And that's an incredible opportunity that I wouldn't have had otherwise, and wouldn't have had the time and space to have done. But it's also something that's built on my working skills. As project managing that team, I've got a deep suitcase of things that I can bring to bear on that project and help ensure that it happens very successfully for everyone who is part of it. So really nice fit in terms of alignment with what I'm doing, who I'm becoming, where I belong, and utilising those skills and experiences that went before. Another one of those is involvement with my local community and local primary school. People talk about the P&C. Well, I'm the C of P&C. I'm the community of P&C. And the same is I can bring some of those corporate skills to bear, supporting that core of people who are fundamental to the school and keeping the school running, those parents that are deeply involved and just provide the oil that on the wheels of so many volunteer enterprises in our community. If I can bring my experience to help them do what they do better, and perhaps some specialist skills to round out what they're able to do and achieve for the school, has been a really positive experience. And to the point about friends and people you meet and building your community, our school sits at the heart of our local community. And so the people who are there in that school today will be in and around our area for years to come. And when I walk down the street, I think, why don't I know all these people? Well, here's one way that I can know more of these people and be embedded in the community and extend that friendship group into perhaps some younger cohorts that I can help and support.
It sounds very warming to the heart to hear you talk in that way about your place, your community. What place does work have in your life now?
I am still open to paid work. I would not pursue a full-time job. I probably wouldn't even pursue a part-time, maybe, but a role with flexibility and perhaps along the lines of board and advisory work is something that I'd be increasingly open to. But it's probably taken me until now to feel ready to do that well. I was approached about some not-for-profit board work, but I chose not to do that for my own health and well-being. But as I've grown the other things that I'm doing, I don't have a drive to say I must be on that role or I must be in that job. The things I'm doing are really great and I'm really enjoying them. And how can I find more time to do the things I'm doing? How do I ever have time to go to work? It sounds a little bit flippant, but it's true. My husband has seen me having a great time, so he's retired.
It's looked good on you.
Really? Oh, that's quite fun. I did recently have a past work colleague tell me that I hadn't seen her for a while. I'd worked with her in the past, and she said, "You're just glowing." And I thought, oh, that's a really nice endorsement of where I'm at and what I've been able to bring, including to my family. And one of the true gifts of this period has been time to spend with my mother, who unfortunately has dementia. And many of your listeners would be part of that generation as well, caring for parents. And there is so much in that space that needs to be done. And for someone like my mother, who no longer has the capacity to do those things on her own, talking about learning, my goodness, the aged care system is something that we need to learn about.
Yeah.
Because it's not straightforward, and that has required an enormous amount of my time too. But I've learned a lot, and I would say that time, the system piece of it, but also just having the time to spend with my mother, has also taught me a lot more patience than I would ever have had in my working life.
One of the things that I know about you is that you started a new little venture. In this period of resting and recovery, you also found a nice project for yourself that you've been evolving over time. Can you tell us a bit about that?
So I have one of the things I've done is I have an online travel journal, and it has social media feeds associated with it. And that's been building on my corporate experience. so many times I've said to my marketing teams, you have these assets, you must use them. So I've had this lovely library of photos and memories of places I've travelled and places I've been lucky enough to see. So I've pulled them together into a website. And that was a new experience for me, learning how to build a website. And so great, very satisfying creative outlet, and bringing some of that content together. And then layering over the social media feeds with it. And, it's not going to change the world, but it's changed my world. And it's very satisfying in terms of a creative outlet and being able to share some of the some of the experiences that I've been lucky enough to have.
Well, I've been fortunate enough to see some of those photos, including some of the sailing ones from one of your recent trips. So we'll include links to your travel sampler in the show notes, and others can follow along on your journeys. I'll be particularly interested in that one coming up in New York. And I'm really curious to know what your kids are making of this new person you've been becoming.
Well, I'm fortunate to have two sons. They're both young adults, very independent, self sustaining, living their own lives. And they're, I think, really enjoying just interacting as adults, and being able to call me at some time of day and I can answer the phone and
I know
message
that
back.
feeling.
And in fact, they're both so pretty busy. It's almost the other way. I message them and think, where are you? Why haven't you called? But it has been a real joy to be able to spend more time with them and to do some of the things they like doing.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's really great for our kids to see us pursuing new things and, having new adventures. And I mean, going back to university, what do they make of that?
Yeah, that's quite a funny experience too. And they occasionally send them samples of my work and they go, oh, better than I could do. I think it's not about you, it's about me.
Exactly.
So that's quite funny. But yeah, they're enjoying it, I think, and enjoying seeing their mother enjoying herself.
I wonder what's it required of you to get to this point, from a mindset perspective.
Changing the mindset is really important, and for me, about accepting where I am and having the time and space to think about where I want to be has been really important. So mind shift, yes. Backing it up with a lot of health related activity, whether that's exercise or those connections with people and other people, and my own personal support network. Um, One of the other things that I've done, I'm a lifelong learner, so you've probably heard that theme through some of these things already. But
Mm.
one of the other things that I've challenged myself with is learning to play golf. And I would say I'm very much a beginner, but that's something that has that health aspect to it. It has the learning aspect to it. It has the friends aspect to it. So it's been a conscious choice, and continuing that theme, to step into a space that gives me those benefits. And I think they just continue to accumulate and grow. The more I do of each of those things, the more certain I am around what I'm doing and what I'm choosing to do. And there have been a couple of things that I think you've talked in a previous blog about dabbling in some things and just trying them. And I have done a bit of that and not gone with a couple of things that I've thought, oh, yeah, like that, it's interesting, but my inner self is telling me do this other thing. That's
Mm.
where I want to put my time and effort. And so I have followed that intuitively, as well as backed it up with some of that conscious decision making.
And it's great to hear you say that, because it's really that finding out that you don't like things as important as finding things that you do like. It's all data, it's all information leading you in the right direction, I think. And so you talked about the golf and friendship. Is friendship one of those areas that you've been specifically focused on in terms of growing out an aspect of your life now?
It is. Over a really busy corporate working life, I've had less time to invest in friendships than perhaps is to my best interests. I do have a very strong network of close girlfriends, women friends, but knowing that I've got more time to invest in the things that I like doing, I want to do those things around people that I like, that I enjoy, that offer me something, that I can offer something to, that is for the longer term, something that will be with me, and where, to that sense of belonging. Who are those people? Where do I find them? I do find them in sailing, and for me, I do find them in golf as well. So those activities have consciously built out some of those friendships, which, I mean, that sounds a little mercenary. Is that the right word? Something like, sounds a little yeah, a little self-centered, but it's not actually. It's just about thinking about where I need to be and what gaps in my life I need to fill that are fulfilling for me.
Yeah, no, I understand that. And it's really, I agree that one of the best ways to make friends is by doing things that you love, where you're meeting people who you share that in common with,
Yeah,
because it's an immediate starting point for friendship, really.
it is. And I think I'm probably a kinder, softer person than I ever was when I was working, because of the demands of, you must do, and you've got deadlines and so on. So that's something that I appreciate in myself, actually. I think that's been really good for me. The time and ability to really grow into that learning is something that I highly value. And while I have always been a learner and a lifelong learner, now having the time to really enjoy that is something that I understand a little bit more, how necessary that is to me and to who I am. Yeah, it's been a despite it having a tough start, it has been a time of quite extraordinary opportunity. The biggest difference I think I see is, or I feel, is claiming the power to make the right decisions in my own interests, and pro- having the headspace to do that, to have thought about things and to make those decisions, as I've said previously, quite deliberately and consciously.
It's such a it's so interesting to me that we are a generation of women who were sold this idea that we do have choices that our mothers and grandmothers didn't have, and that we could have it all, and yet we, god damn it, we end up at this life stage and go, I've actually still, spent a whole lot of my life prioritizing other people and had less focus on myself. And like you, Susan, I've had a very rewarding career, and yet I still observe in myself that I didn't always center myself and my own needs in the full picture of my life of, family responsibilities and work and career progression. It's a strange reflection to have, I think.
It's and I think not uncommon for women in this 50 plus age group. Somebody said to me when I first had children that, yes, you can have it all, just not all at once. And that's how I feel. I've had those bits, and now this bit is mine.
Yes, yes, yes. It's yours to have and to hold.
Yeah, that's
So, if
right.
there's a woman who's listening today who's facing her own hard ending, and I actually do a lot of coaching with women who are experiencing burnout, and I would love for your something that you would want her to know in that moment.
There is light and life on the other side. You will come through this. It will take time to process, but give yourself the gift of time, at least mentally. If you've got to jump into something else, then you do what you've got to do. But at least give yourself the headspace to process it and think about it, because you must look out for yourself. You really must, for yourself. You'll be better for it. She will be better for it, and so will everyone around her.
Yeah. And I guess, at the beginning of this, I described your work change as a life quake, and the concept of life quake is really significant change. And of course, we know that times of really big change involve all the things that you've described, the letting go as well as the letting go of things as well as bringing in the new, and that is particularly when the ending comes sharply and harshly, can be a really difficult and painful time. So that message about kindness to self and taking the time to recover is really important.
The other thing that I'd suggest to anyone in that position is truly program some exercise into every single day, even if it's only 15 or 20 minutes, but use that time to rest your mind. You're getting some physical activity, and that's great and important, but use it to rest your mind, to step out of the demands of the immediate and your day-to-day, and just let your mind be, because it's probably completely full and overflowing and struggling with priorities. Just let it be. Just give it a break, as well as yourself, with getting some exercise. You're trying to deal with so many decisions, and you're probably mentally and physically exhausted, and means you're not going to be making the best decisions. So carving out some time for yourself is not selfish. It's sanity. It really is. It's for your own sanity you need to do it, and it will help you regain some of that resilience and the objectivity you need to get through some of the tough days.
I remember hearing someone talk once about rest is radical, and that idea that you just set out about walking, but also just allowing your mind to rest as part of the recovery process is really, really important. It's a really great message to share, Susan. Thank you. And so before we finish up, what's next on your horizon?
So I'm off on this very exciting adventure to the New York Yacht Club to go.
Wow. Say more.
So this is an event that will take place in September this year. Our club Commodore, Vice Commodore, is an Olympian, and she's been invited to bring a women's team to contest this international championship. There will be 20 teams from around the world, 10 from the US and 10 invited skippers from around the world, who will take their teams with them and contest this event. So the team's starting to train here, working out who's best in what position and what needs to be done, and how to bring that team together, who have been used to sailing on all different boats, but come together as a unified team to be able to race safely and fast.
Of course.
And contest this event with the cream of women sailors from around the world. And it'll come with some lovely social things. There'll be a lovely opening event and, cocktail party at the end and so on. So it's truly a once in a lifetime that I'm delighted to be part of. So that's the most exciting thing.
Yes, it sounds absolutely wonderful. So in finishing up, if there was one thing you could change about how society sees women over 50, what would it be?
So we're in an age where there's so much talk about skills shortages and productivity and the changes technology is bringing, and there is a wealth of experience that society just doesn't see. These wise women of our community have so much to offer. Just don't call them old, because they're at their peak, and we'd all be so much better off if they were honoured and celebrated.
Yes, I love that. I love that. Susan, thank you for joining me today on Flourish After 50. I've really enjoyed hearing the way in which you've built out a flourishing life after a really difficult end to your career and COVID and all of the challenges that brought, and the resilience that you've shown in really stepping forward with courage and energy and vitality into this next stage. And I look forward to hearing about your sailing adventures. And thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Sue. It's been a real pleasure, and I really hope there's some kernels of knowledge in there that might help some other people.
I'm sure there definitely are. Thanks for listening to Flourish After 50. If today's conversation resonated and you're ready to take the next step, you can work with me one-on-one as your coach, join my 6-week Life on Your Terms program, or be part of a monthly discussion group where we get deeper into some of the topics on this podcast, the Flourish After 50 Circle. You'll find the details and links at flourishafter50.com.au or in the show notes. I'd also love your support. Follow the show on your favourite podcast app, share this episode with a friend, and leave a review. It helps more women discover Flourish After 50 and start their own journey towards what's next. Thank you for listening and for giving yourself the space to be curious about all the possibilities that lie ahead for you. This episode was recorded on the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and I pay my respects to elders past and present.